Julian Blackwood believed in numbers. He believed in market trends and the cold, hard logic of a perfectly executed deal. At 35, he'd built an empire of glass and steel from the ashes of his family's fortune, but he'd also built walls around his heart that were just as high. He didn't believe in luck or fate, and he certainly didn't believe in blind dates. Yet, here he was. He sat in the city's most minimalist and offensively expensive restaurant, a place so sterile it almost made his own empty penthouse feel cozy. He'd only agreed to this farce to silence his sister's endless nagging about his self-imposed isolation. He glanced at his platinum watch. 7 minutes late. He'd give her 3 more, then he could justifiably call it a night and retreat to the quiet, predictable solitude he craved. Just as he was about to signal for the check, a small voice cut right through the dining room's hushed silence. "Are you the one waiting for my mommy?" Julian looked down. Standing right beside his table was a little girl, no older than 8. She was dressed in a lavender dress that was a little too big but perfectly clean. Her dark hair was pulled into a single, slightly lopsided braid, and she was clutching a worn teddy bear with a look of pure determination. She stared up at him with wide, serious brown eyes that held none of the shyness you'd expect from a child. He was so surprised he couldn't do anything but stare. She took his silence as a yes. "I thought so," she said with a firm nod. "Mom's sick, so I came instead." For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Julian Blackwood was completely speechless. Other patrons began to stare, and a low murmur rippled through the room. A child, all alone, sitting down with the city's most notorious recluse. His first instinct should have been to call security, or the manager, or her parents. But instead, he just found himself gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "You came instead," he repeated, the words feeling ridiculous and foreign on his tongue. "Yes, I'm Lily. My mommy is Clara. She has a really bad flu. She said she was sorry and that she'd call to reschedule, but I told her that was rude. You can't just stand someone up, so I'm here." Julian just stared at her. This tiny human was lecturing him on manners. A faint smile touched his lips before he could stop it. "And your mother was okay with this plan?" Lily's expression didn't even flicker. "She was asleep," she said, as if it was the most obvious answer in the world. "She worked a double shift yesterday before she got sick. She cleans offices downtown. She says from the top floors you can see the whole city, all lit up like fallen stars. But it makes her really tired. Anyway, when she's this tired, a marching band could stomp through her room and she wouldn't wake up." Julian, a man who negotiated billion-dollar mergers without so much as blinking, was utterly disarmed. He ordered her a hot chocolate, and as she sipped it, she told him all about her mother. She spoke with that unfiltered, genuine adoration only a child can have. He learned that Clara loved the color of the sky just before the sun vanishes. He learned that she used to paint before she had to sell her supplies to get the car fixed. He learned that she sang silly songs while she cooked and that her hugs felt, in Lily's words, like being wrapped in sunshine. As Lily talked, Julian felt a strange, unfamiliar ache in his chest. His world was full of contracts and bottom lines, of people who always wanted something from him. A woman he had once loved had betrayed him, a wound that had long since turned his heart to stone. His relationships were transactions, but here was this little girl, not asking for a single thing, just sharing. She was painting a portrait of a woman who sounded more real and vibrant than anyone he had met in years. When the hot chocolate was gone, Julian did something completely unplanned. He paid the bill, then looked at Lily. "I'd like to send some soup to your mother," he said, the offer feeling clumsy on his tongue. Lily's eyes lit up. She would like that. He got their address, and after making sure a trusted car service took Lily straight to her front door, Julian didn't just send soup. He sent the city's best concierge doctor, along with a care package overflowing with medicine, a soft blanket, and on a whim, a small set of watercolor paints. The next evening, his phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Blackwood? This is Clara, Lily's mother. I don't know what to say. I woke up to a doctor in my house and my daughter confessing she'd gone on my blind date." You could hear the sheer mortification in her voice. "Please, don't worry about it," he said, surprised at how sincere he sounded. "Your daughter is extraordinary. She's grounded until she's 30, Clara shot back, a hint of exhausted humor in her voice. "But thank you for your kindness. It was far too much, but thank you." That first conversation was a little awkward. It was a dance between her pride and his clumsy attempts at a real connection. He found himself wanting to hear her voice again. A few days later, he made up an excuse, claiming Lily had left her teddy bear at the restaurant, even though he secretly had his assistant grab it that same night. When Clara opened the door, he finally saw the woman from Lily's stories. She was still pale from her illness, but her eyes had the same warmth her daughter had described as sunshine. They stood there in the doorway of her small, clean apartment, a universe away from his sprawling, empty penthouse, and they just talked. Days turned into weeks. He kept finding excuses. A leaky faucet he happened to know a guy for, taking Lily to the park so Clara could have a few hours to herself. These weren't the grand gestures the world expected from a billionaire. They were small, quiet acts of just showing up. He learned her dream was to open a small art studio for kids. She learned his reclusiveness was just a shield built to guard a heart that had been shattered years ago. One crisp autumn Saturday, he invited them to his home. The mansion was magnificent and cold, a monument to both his success and his loneliness. He led them through silent, echoing halls to a room at the far end of the West Wing. Its walls were made of glass, looking out over the hills as the sun began to set. The room, which had been empty just a week before, was now a fully equipped art studio. Canvases, paints of every imaginable color, brushes and easels were all perfectly arranged. In the center of it all was a large canvas positioned to capture the sunset. Clara stopped dead in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "Julian, I can't." This was the moment. I could see the pride and fear at war in her eyes. He turned to her, his voice lower and more vulnerable than he had ever allowed it to be. "I spent 10 years building an empire because someone I trusted taught me that love was a transaction. I built walls so high that no one could ever hurt me again. And I succeeded. I have everything, Clara, and I have nothing that matters. Then this little girl walks into my life with a beat-up teddy bear and stories about her mom who loves sunsets. For the first time in a decade, I felt something real. You and Lily, you matter." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. She finally saw him not as a billionaire savior, but a lonely man asking for a bridge to be built across the chasm of his own making. She stepped into the room and lightly touched one of the canvases. "I've been so scared. Scared of being a burden, scared of letting anyone in. I didn't think I deserved a second chance." Julian gently took her hand. Second chances are what we give each other. Lily, who had been watching them with wide, knowing eyes, suddenly ran forward and hugged both of their legs. "See?" she said, her voice muffled against them. "I told you he was nice." The story doesn't end with a sudden fairy tale wedding. It ends much more quietly. A few months later, in a sun-drenched art studio, Julian is on the floor covered in finger paint and laughing as Lily tries to paint his nose blue. At her easel, Clara is painting the sunset, her smile genuine and radiant, her colors bold and full of life. They had been 3 separate lonely souls. It took a child's bold mission to fix her mother's sadness to bring them together. In the end, the little girl who took her mom's place on a blind date didn't just find her a companion. She built a family, proving that real wealth isn't about what you have in the bank, but about the quiet, steady warmth of a heart that has finally come home. If this story warmed your heart, let us know your favorite part in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe for more stories that believe in the power of a second chance.